and welcome back to Kitchen Sink with G. Happy 2025. I'm very excited about the start of this year. I'm excited to bring you more content, more everything. I'm about to do a PT course, which means that I'm going to be able to integrate cycle syncing, movement into more of this content and offer online coaching as well to sync your workouts with your cycle. So without further ado, on theme, we have the second video in this little mini series in which we are focusing on how to move throughout your 28-day cycle. The previous video we talked about how to eat and I went through each phase. In this video, we're going to talk about each phase and specifically the types of energy that you'll feel in that phase, the types of exercises to do that suit the energy of that phase, specific movements, so a bit more specific like types of workouts to do, like what type of classes, what type of movements to do within those workouts and classes, and then how to fuel, refuel, and recovery techniques. So throughout your 28-day cycle, you've got two major main hormones that will govern your energy. The fluctuation of these hormones will in turn govern your energy fluctuations, broadly speaking, because you'll also have other things going on in your life, obviously, but speaking strictly hormonally. So you might have guessed already, but the main hormones I'm talking about here are estrogen and progesterone. The first half of your cycle is estrogen dominant, meaning your energy is more likely to be much higher. You're more active, more sociable, more bubbly, busy. Whereas the second half of your cycle, so from after you've ovulated, this half is progesterone dominant. Progesterone, as we've mentioned in previous videos, makes everything slow down, so you're more likely to feel lower, slower when it comes to vibe, mood, and energy. I just want to also say that contrary to what you may have read or seen or anything, you can exercise all cycle round. It's not about not exercising and over-exercising here, it's how to tailor the types of exercises you do in sync with your cycle. There will be times in your cycle, I'm sure you felt this before, I certainly have, I don't know any woman that probably hasn't. There are times in your cycle when you feel great doing certain types of exercise and certain workouts, and sometimes where it is much harder, you recover slower, you do not feel great at all afterwards. And basically this video is just going to clarify exactly what those right and beneficial types of exercise are to do for that phase, and what are potentially not so, or they're going to be a bit harder in that phase, so that you can, when you know what phase you are in your cycle, you can choose the type of exercise that you do that suits your energy and your hormones and your body at that time. Rather than pushing against yourself, you're working with yourself. Because despite being high energy and low energy, typically, there are actually some incredibly beneficial properties of both hormones that I'm not going to spoil anything now, but for example, estrogen is incredibly anabolic, so that's the time to build muscle. Progesterone, you slow everything down and you'll focus a bit more on alignment. And anyway, that's what we're going to get into in this video. I also want to mention very quickly on energy, transition days. This is a term which I learned from my favorite period Bible book by Maisie Hill called Period Power. And transition days are the days where you transition from phase to phase. And these are the days where you will feel your energy like, wow, I feel great today. Like yesterday I was feeling a bit, nah, today I feel amazing. Or it's the day after you've ovulated or a couple of days after where you wake up in the morning feeling like you've been hit by a bus, everything feels hard. These are your transition days. So we have these 4 phases that are pretty obvious that we flow from one to the next, but there are also the transition days in between each phase, which if you track your period, which I seriously recommend that you do track your cycle, you note these transition days because they will also impact your energy, just like knowing what phase you're in will too. I'm also going to be releasing a great little print off, which means that you can track your own cycle for yourself if you don't use an app. I prefer to use pen and paper. I've got multiple little journals lying around. I prefer to stay off my phone for things like that. So I will provide a little printable cycle tracking PDF coming very soon. So nonetheless, an important digression, but what you are here for, how to move in each phase of your cycle, starting with the menstrual phase. Menstrual phase is day 1, it's the start of your period, the start of your bleed, usually lasts about 3 to 5, sometimes 6 or 7 days long. It's within the follicular phase, but for the sake of these videos, I've isolated the menstrual phase as its own phase, even though it is part of the follicular phase. But the menstrual phase, when you're on your period, even for myself, from cycle to cycle, I feel very different, and it will also differ between people. So with this phase specifically, it's quite difficult to be as specific and direct, because it is very individually dependent. And from day to day, you will feel different too. Your day one might feel totally different to your day two. Your cramps and your other PMS symptoms might make it hard to train, but then you also might feel the pullback from the hormones that were holding you back in the last phase. You might have so much energy now. So you might have loads of energy, or you might just want to crawl up in bed and with the hot water bottle and cramps and things. So it is incredibly individual. But this is your phase where you're like easing into a particularly active phase. You don't want to kill yourself here. Even if you come straight out the starting blocks with all this energy, chances are you're going to get to your follicular phase and where your energy should be its highest, and not have that full energy. So start slow, warm up basically. This is your warm up phase. You want to get things moving, get rid of those prostaglandins that are building up and creating stiff muscles and tension and everything during your luteal phase. So I'll either do a light form of exercise if I'm feeling stiff and sore, probably a stretch on my mat, maybe some Pilates, incorporate some light weights or strength or resistance bands are great. Love going for a walk, and it's the best thing to do ever. Just ground yourself in nature. If you can walk barefoot, that's the best. So a beach walk, a nice sea swim, anything that's kind of cleansing but rejuvenating, that's light, like you're moving your body. But the best forms of exercise to do here are, I take this phase, I take day by day. If I feel super energized, which I often do in the first couple of days as a result of the drop in progesterone, that notoriously makes me feel like stiff, I might step it up and do a workout in the gym if I feel the energy for it, or I'll find a class online or on YouTube, which I feel it's easier to dip in and out of if I suddenly feel halfway that I don't want to do this anymore. It's a lot easier than leaving a class. But I also feel perfectly fine if I go to the gym and I'm doing light weights, then I'm perfectly fine to leave. But I will gauge it, and I know that my recovery, I might feel stiffer afterwards. So I prefer to do something lighter when I'm on my period. Sport, I love tennis. I used to surf a lot more than I do now, but surfing or any kind of sport, now is actually a great time to do that because it's using your cognition is great in this phase. Obviously, don't push yourself too hard. As we've said, this is the warm-up phase, but something that's using your whole body, that's warming you up. Sport will use your brain too, your hand-eye coordination, if you have the energy for it and your cramps aren't holding you back. As I've said, this is like a very individually dependent phase and how you're feeling day by day. If you have like track training or specific training, just go easy on yourself, go light. Like I wouldn't cancel it unless you are properly cramping. But if you feel up for it, go for it. And most people are a lot more aware these days. You just say, listen, I'm on my period, I'm not sure how this is gonna go. Most people, it's great that you're even showing up and you're there. So basically listen to your body, listen to yourself, use your intuition. If you have the energy, go for it. If you don't. Just be wary that your body is also going through a lot right now. It's shedding, getting rid of an old layer whilst rebuilding the layer underneath as well. You've got a lot going on in your body anyways, that extra stress of a workout could potentially impact that too and deplete your energy. So just be wary and go with how you feel. If you feel like stopping, go home, do what you need to do, but trust yourself. Your energy is only going to increase after this, so make sure that you save it up, which means that you can go harder and fuller in your follicular and ovulatory phases, which follow this phase. Fueling, as I said, have something before your workout. Your hormones are low right now, so there's not much natural energy that you will feel like in the follicular and ovulatory phases, which you get a natural kick from estrogen. Your hormones are low, so you might need a little kickstarter of glucose for energy. Chances are you might not be that hungry in the morning, you might feel a bit nauseous and that, which is why I suggested a warm drink or a smoothie. If I'm gonna go and train, I will add some calories to the drink that I'm taking in. Beetroot latte would be like a perfect one with almond milk or something. Put a little bit of protein in there. Beetroot is a great food for this phase. If you're making a smoothie, banana, almond butter, protein, almond milk, that'd be a great fuel for your workouts or for any kind of training. And if we want to get nitty gritty and like perfect, if you're into that stuff, 15 grams of protein pre-workout is optimal before a strength workout. And if you're doing endurance and cardio, add 30 grams of carbohydrate to that. So you've got your protein. If you're doing strength workout, if you're doing cardio or endurance, add 30 grams of carbohydrate to that. Glucose is the energy that you need for endurance and cardio exercise. Refueling after your workouts, always refuel with protein. If that's strength, if that's endurance, as a woman, always just refuel with protein. Specifically in this phase, don't forget that your uterine lining is shedding and underneath it a new one is building. What's tissue made out of? It's made out of proteins. So regardless, you're needing to eat more protein in this phase. If you're training and using your muscles, those broken muscles are going to need amino acids to repair themselves too. So protein is almost a non-negotiable. The general rule of thumb is 35 grams of protein post-workout. For women specifically, I've made a reel on this, which you can find on my Instagram. You have a female-specific window from 30 minutes to 40 minutes after your workout to get that protein in. In that window is when your insulin is most receptive to taking that energy, those nutrients, to your muscle and to the tissues that need it. So have your meal afterwards, have your eggs or have lunch, have your chicken breast or steak or fish or whatever you have. Replenishing your glycogen stores in your muscles is also important, so some carbohydrates after your workout, depending on how long you worked out for, but nevertheless, you're going to be using glucose or glycogen stores. So basically refuel with a balanced plate of protein, carbohydrates and fats. Fats are the building blocks of hormones as they're rising right now, and they're also going to make sure that the energy remains stable throughout the day. So a 3 to 4 egg omelette with some veggies, piece of toast if you feel like it, some feta cheese on top, some cherry tomatoes, add some Marmite or Bovril or yeast extract on top. That's my absolute favorite, and super high in B vitamins and salts and lots of just micronutrients that are great whilst you're bleeding and losing minerals. Miso soup's also a great one, random but great. And yeah, I said steak there, but if you're hungry and feeling just low energy, even if you get to the end of the day and you're feeling low energy, have a steak. I'm sorry if you're vegan, but if you have low energy in this phase, it will genuinely transform your energy. In terms of recovery, stretch out that luteal stiffness and help any hormones that have been left in any dark corners get out into your bloodstream and clear, because another key aim in this phase and the follicular phase is to clear out old hormones whilst the new ones are building, because old hormones can lead to sore boobs and other hormone imbalance later in your cycle. So it's quite important to get rid of old hormones in the early phases of your cycle. Hot bath or warm bath for stiff muscles, absolute favorite. And chuck a large handful, a bag, if you've got a big bag of Epsom salts, big handful, chuck that in your bath. And Epsom salts are basically magnesium, and that's ideal all cycle round. I would recommend that for stiff muscles. And a warm bath, especially if you're feeling a little bit cooler, because your body temperature drops with the hormonal drop at the beginning of this phase and the beginning of your cycle. So if you're feeling a little bit chilly, a warm bath is perfect. Chuck some Epsom salts in there, which will soothe any muscle cramps, period cramps, abdominal cramps, the works, and it will help you sleep like a baby. On sleep, get all the rest you can in this phase. Don't judge yourself. If you need a nap, have a nap or lie down during the day if you can. Don't forget what your body's going through right now. She's doing a lot. So if you feel like napping, nap. If you want an early night, take an early night. And when you wake up after your nap or in the mornings, make sure that you get moving, and that will basically activate this magnificent energy boost that you primed by getting a few extra Zs. So moving on to your follicular phase. Your follicular phase this is where estrogen is the highest and it is the dominant hormone. Estrogen is anabolic. Anabolic means that it builds muscle, it builds tissue, your hair will grow more in this phase, your skin will look plumper. It's your strongest phase. You're going to feel the most bulletproof and strong with the most power, so prioritize your strength work. Muscle repair and growth is much easier when you've got high estrogen. So this is a great phase for maximal gains basically, and the easiest and fastest recovery. Another thing about estrogen has a neuroexcitatory effect. So you have improved neuromuscular function and increased force production. Hormonally, this is the phase where you're primed to perform, so you can biologically be pushing yourself. In this phase, your pain tolerance is higher and recovery from intense workouts will be super efficient and faster. But now, whether you push yourself or not, provided you refuel and recover optimally, which I'm gonna go through in a sec, yeah, you can push yourself. Though I will say, obviously, don't kill yourself. The focus and the goal here is making the most of the natural hormonal energy that you're feeling and anabolic properties to enhance your training potential and long-term strength and fitness. And in this phase, you really can, and you can push and you can get sweaty and you can get into it. So it's about that rather than killing yourself. The best types of exercise to do in this phase are pretty much anything and everything goes. But to capitalize on the high energy and anabolic properties of estrogen, choose high energy, high intensity, strong, explosive, powerful movements. So this is the phase basically for CrossFit and HIIT, circuit training with lots of compound movements, boxing, a long run, EMOMs, sprints, anything, yeah, powerful and explosive. If you're high rocks training, anything that's super high energy, because yeah, your recovery is higher, your potential to build muscle and recover faster is higher. This is also the phase where you're most likely to hit and break your PBs and personal records. So for that reason, push yourself, challenge yourself, push your boundaries, add an extra kilometer or two onto the end of your run, up the kgs or add a couple of extra kgs on your last set. Tap into that last bit of fuel in the tank at the end of your workout with a sprint of like 3 minutes of high intensity exercises or 1 minute all out on a piece of cardio equipment. Another incredibly valid and important point to note here, and this also applies in the ovulatory phase, which is relevant in this time with high levels of estrogen. Estrogen has a tendency to increase the laxity of your joints. Laxity sounds like elastic, right? So your joints are slightly more elastic, which means you are more supple and flexible, which is great, though the risk of hyperextension or overextension or pulling muscles is greater. Therefore, it is very, very, very important that you warm up well and cool down properly before and after a hectic training session. As I've said, this is the phase to go for it. And when you are training, to focus on strength and composing yourself. So make sure that you're maintaining strong strength, good form throughout your workout, and that you've warmed up and cooled down well. Fueling, in order to maximize the aerobic potential of your workouts in this phase, pre-fuel with carbs. Simple or complex. Simple, you'll burn straight away, but as we know, complex carbs will keep you going for longer. And I'm talking the difference between like chocolate and sweets, or a banana, a whole fruit, or a bowl of oats being simple and complex carbs. Another way to make your carb energy last longer is to pair it with a fat, so like some nuts, or a form of protein. So if you're doing more endurance and you want that energy to last longer, pair it with a fat or a protein. But if you're doing sprints and high intensity and cardio, simple carbs is a great way to maintain your energy. Refueling, carbs are important again to refuel. If you tapped into your glycogen stores in your muscle, which is your stored glucose inside your muscle, then obviously you want to restock those glycogen stores. If you trained hard, they'll be depleted now. And obviously, again, protein is incredibly, incredibly important. As estrogen rising, dominant in this phase, you're building muscle, building tissue, you got to have those amino acids that help actually build the tissue and build your muscle. Recovery, this is the phase to hit the sauna for your recovery. I'm a massive worshipper of Stacey Sims, and I heard her speaking on a recent podcast advising sauna post-resistance training to increase blood volume. And this is the phase that would be best to do this in. The benefits of higher blood volume are you've basically just got more blood to pump around with more potential to carry oxygen around the body. So without going into too much scientific detail, when you have a low blood volume, you feel like drained and weak and blur. Personally, that's something that I do now, and I've felt my energy crazy improve because I previously struggled with a low blood volume. So how it works is post-resistance training workout, so a strength workout or using bands or TRX or anything where you're doing strength training, where your muscles are fatigued and worked. The added dehydration of going into the sauna, so you're dehydrated, stimulates the body to up its production of blood, red blood cells, plasma. So whilst estrogen is anabolic and building, this hormone being present will support this process. For recovery also, a hot bath or jacuzzi, again, always a good idea for stiff muscles and to loosen everything up after a hectic training session. If you're having a bath, always, I just as a default will throw Epsom salts in there for the magnesium for my muscles. With these hot treatments, I prefer to cool down naturally, rather than ice bath or anything too kind of abrasive or extreme. A cold or like tepid shower is fine, but when the body goes from a really, really high temperature to plunging into freezing, I know this is part of the point of extreme temperature cycling, to exercise the body's thermoregulatory system. Though personally, I've tried these and I do find that sometimes it can be quite draining. Staying in too long in an ice bath totally drains me. I can plunge, but again, with the extreme hot and extreme cold, a lot is actually coming out now that all of those benefits and everything was all tested on men. Obviously, classic. So for women, simpler, gentler is always best for hormones. Anything that's crazy for hormones freak out and they're very sensitive. So if it's not feeling great for you, it might be a good idea to just, hold back on anything that's too crazy and extreme. Massage, again, I'm a big fan. Pain tolerance is higher in this phase, so go with like a really, really strong massage or a deep tissue or something that can really get any knots knots out, or especially if you're lifting heavy and training hard. A relaxing massage is also not a bad idea towards the end of the day, especially if you had a high energy day and you did everything very, very estrogen dominantly. Having a massage to calm the nervous system before you go to sleep and relax everything will help your sleep, which will help your recovery and recharge for a packed next day. So do what you can to wind yourself down in the evenings, especially if your follicular and ovulatory days are super high energy. Wind yourself down well so that you can sleep well. So I'd also look at like your blue light timings in the evenings. Reading before sleep is a great one, listening to music, breath work, just kind of winding yourself down slowly, turning the lights down if it's like light outside, or yeah, minimizing lights, blue lights at least an hour before you go to sleep. Do every kind of sleep hygiene thing that you can so that you sleep really well in this phase, and then you have your full energy for the next day and the days to come. So next, the ovulatory phase. This again is a very, very mini phase within, I guess it comes right at the end of the follicular phase, but it's kind of the in-between between follicular and luteal. This little mini phase is the peak of estrogen. So this is when estrogen is highest. It's when the follicle ruptures, the egg is released. Biologically, it's your fertile window. Naturally, being the fertile window, you're primed to get out there and get yourself pregnant. So you've got loads and loads and loads of energy. Estrogen, as I said, estrogen peak. So this is your phase where your energy is at its peak, probably your optimal performance phase. It's a little window basically, usually around day 14. If you've got a regular 28-day cycle, your ovulatory phase will fall somewhere between day 13 to day 15, day 16. That is your window, your 2 to 3 day window. And yeah, this is the phase to get it, because as soon as the follicle's ruptured and the egg's released, all the hormones go crashing down. So estrogen, your LH, your FSH, all goes down and energy goes down with it. So in the ovulatory phase, the goal ties into the mood and the vibe of the ovulatory phase. It's expressive, outward focused, high energy too, though I will say you might feel a crazy slump at this time. I sometimes do. Ovulating is also an energy intensive process, pushing the dominant follicle to its final stage. It can get 2 to 3 centimeters big, that's big, to then rupture, the egg to come out, governed by a positive feedback loop of exponentially rising hormones. So you've got the hormones that are rising, which this all takes a lot of energy. So if you're not feeling like a peak of energy because of your high estrogen, don't worry about it. I sometimes do around my ovulatory phase feel a kind of slump and really hungry. And so again, it's individual dependent, but mostly this is because of the high estrogen. This is your super energetic phase. So this is why I prefer to focus on expressive than high energy forms of expression, which don't have to be related to having this energy as much as it can be a super sweaty workout or a run. If you've already done that for 1 to 2 weeks in your follicular phase, you might want to mix it up. So this is the phase to try something new. Try a new dance class. It's expressive, it's movement, it gets everything moving and flowing, it's a bit of strength, you can get sweaty doing it. Try, if you already dance, try a new type of dance class. Try pole, try ballet, try contemporary, hip hop, ballroom. Yoga can be super expressive too, especially if you're using the breath and flowing with your yoga practice. That can be a form of expression as well. So in the ovulatory phase, yes, your estrogen is high, you're high energy, but I'd focus more so on expressive movements and expressive forms of movement and exercise, as opposed to the high energy and the strength and everything, which is follicular. Obviously, if you want to carry it all the way through, carry it through with your strength and everything. You've still got the high energy and the anabolic properties of estrogen as you did in the last phase, the follicular phase, arguably higher than ever before. So yeah, a sweaty, strong workout is still a very good idea, especially. I also sometimes feel around ovulation that I feel a bit like misplaced or kind of lost. And I think it comes from what I've read and everything, it comes from this super surge of high energy. And if I don't use it properly or express it or get it out, I feel like kind of anxious, and then I end up feeling bleh. So even if you have started feeling like that, an expressive form, going for a run or a sweaty workout or something, can actually help relieve that. It might be a build-up of energy, basically. So around day 14, those plus minus 2 days, get some form of expressive movement out, listening to some amazing music and dancing around the kitchen, and it should relieve any kind of, if you're feeling a bit like tight, like an hour of sport or An hour class just helps also for me to focus my erratic brain in this phase for 90 minutes or an hour, whilst also spending that energy, which gives a nice serotonin boost, also helps me sleep better later, so I'm not lying in bed with all this energy still running around. So I'd highly recommend in this phase, find time to move your body whenever you can, wherever you can. Your energy is more likely also to be highest first thing in the morning. It's the same in the follicular phase. So upon waking is your highest energy. I would caution to train or do your workouts or exercise in the evenings, because then you have risen your cortisol, your adrenaline, all of that. Calming down before sleep. Sleep is super important in this phase or all cycle round, but especially when you are high energy and go, 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 you might find it harder to fall asleep afterwards. So I would say if you work working hours, to wake up earlier, get your workout done before work versus doing your workout after work, on your way home, or before dinner or before bed. Fueling, if there was a phase to train fasted, it would be now. Though many advise against it all cycle round for women specifically because of our very different hormonal system to men, who were the original testees of the efficacy of fasted training. I quite like the feel of a fasted training session in this phase. So if I'm training first thing in the morning, I do tend to put very little in my stomach, though I'll always hydrate first. So I'll have a coconut water or an electrolyte drink or some lemon in some water in a big pint glass of water. Some salt on my tongue first, and that helps the hydration to be absorbed. A green juice. I'm also a big fan of making my own nut and seed milk, so I'll literally just put, and for seed cycling too, a tablespoon of sesame seeds, tablespoon of sunflower seeds, which is specific to this phase, in about a cup or two of water, blend it up in my NutriBullet with some salt, and then you've got your own seed milk, and you get your seed cycling seeds in there. I'm going to do a full video on seed cycling, but like that's also something that I would have potentially before training in this phase. And I can add some spirulina or beetroot powder or some half a banana even, collagen. Collagen's great in this phase, and also obviously pre-workout to get some protein in there too. So that's kind of what I put in my stomach before training. Then I will refuel with like a proper meal after my workout when I get home in the morning. If I'm playing sport later in the day or training, same as menstrual and follicular phase, your fuel before should include some complex carbs, ideally cooked, unless if you're having raw fruits or raw veggies, which is perfect in the ovulatory phase. Just have those like an hour or two at least before your training so it's properly digested. So simpler foods before your session if it's quite soon before your session. Refuel, again, so if you're having your breakfast after your session or your lunch after your training session, again, glucose and starchy veg are perfect to replenish the glycogen stores. Proteins, obviously important all cycle round. Eggs, great breakfast for after a workout and especially in this phase. Fats in your refuel, obviously good to curb some hunger, especially if you're refueling with a pretty simple meal. Add some fats in there like some olive oil or tahini, and that's going to help your energy stay stable for longer. And it is, I will say though, that it is very important that you refuel adequately in this phase. You might not be as hungry and you might have a lot of energy, but caloric restriction has the potential to impair your recovery, impair your sleep, impair your muscle growth and your muscle recovery and your future potential performance and benefits of even having trained. So just bear that in mind. Just make sure that you are still hitting your calories for the day. Recovery, as you wish. Cool down and warm up well, as I've said before about joint laxity and high estrogen. But again, this is being a fairly flexible phase. Epsom salt bath, again, is great. Don't stay in too long because your body temperature will naturally be higher and it will be rising now. But magnesium tends to drop around ovulation. So getting those magnesium salts in, absorbed through your skin, is a great way to get magnesium in or ingest them in a supplement. Low magnesium can cause headaches or achy joints. So that kind of like stiff and crampy feeling that you might get in your calves or in your legs before bed, that would be magnesium deficiencies or hormone headaches as well. So I totally lost track of time. We actually had tennis booked. So I've just popped out for a quick session of tennis. I will shower once I have finished recording this video. So moving on to the final phase is the luteal phase. As I've mentioned, the second half of your cycle is where progesterone is dominant. Right before ovulation, estrogen peaks and then it rapidly drops. Progesterone will then start to climb up and become the dominant hormone for this second half of the cycle. The luteal phase in a textbook is day 14 or once you've ovulated until day 28, and it ends with the beginning of your next period. It will be consistently 14 days as well. It's more consistent in length than the follicular phase, which can vary, whereas the luteal phase is generally like, if you know when you've ovulated, you can pretty much guarantee that 14 days from the day that you ovulated will be your start of your next period. So the luteal phase, also known as the progesterone dominant phase. In previous videos and at the beginning of this one, I also mentioned that progesterone is one of those, it is the hormone notorious for making everything slow down, which you might ask, like, how does that come into play when it comes to exercise and movement and working out and training? But that's what this video is all about, is to show you and tell you exactly how you can train throughout your cycle. So remember at the beginning of this video, I spoke about transition days. If there's a transition day that you're gonna feel, it's gonna be this one, when estrogen drops and your energy absolutely crashes. So progesterone is kind of the opposite of estrogen. If estrogen is energetic, had a neuroexcitatory effect, sped up your recovery and led to building muscle, progesterone has a cortical excitability inhibitory effect. So basically your power generation is impaired when progesterone is high. Estrogen dominance makes you want to get out there, go do things, whereas progesterone produces prostaglandins, which makes everything harder. You feel a bit stiffer. You'll feel prostaglandins in your muscle, just makes everything harder. And you got generally lower energy because your body is doing a lot in this phase. Progesterone is the hormone essential for the building of the lining of the uterine wall, which is exactly what's happening in this phase. For more information on that, watch my luteal phase video. Where in the follicular phase, where estrogen was dominant, your pain tolerance was higher. Now pain tolerance is lower. You will know that you're in your progesterone dominant phase and you're in your luteal phase because you feel a bit like sensitive. It feels painful to push or to like use your muscles. Feels like there's more resistance, and you generally just feel a bit more reluctant to do anything. And where estrogen is anabolic and puts the body into muscle and tissue building mode, progesterone is actually catabolic, meaning when it's high, the tendency is to break things down. When you relate this to what's happening in the body needs fuel to thicken the uterine lining. Progesterone is responsible for thickening the uterine lining, and therefore all the events that happen in this phase need to support that thickening of the uterine lining. So if it has to break down tissue to provide amino acids to create the uterine lining, it will. And this is why if you are in a stressful or caloric restrictive time, you potentially will lose your cycle. So I know this now sounds all very doom and gloom, and estrogen phase is very much favorable for training and working out, and progesterone dominant phases, it sounds absolutely not. And to be honest, you've probably experienced this already, so this isn't news to you. But I like to look at the luteal phase as a time for precision. You're likely to feel in your mood more analytical, is a nice way to put it, but maybe critical, snappy, twitchy. You see things that are wrong a lot. Sometimes you say them more often, or you internalize them, and it feels a bit frustrating. But anyways, the theme kind of this phase is analytical, critical, which in the luteal phase video, I talk about how to optimize that exactly, because that's the time to be doing work and things where you're editing and using that analytical ability. So these being very natural, normal, inevitable feels for this phase, work with them, which is way less depressing and frustrating than trying to work against them and try and do what you did last week, like go to a HIIT class or go to CrossFit and end up being even more nitpicky and perfectionist and annoyed at yourself because you can't do it. Like, work with where you are right now. That's what all this education and knowledge and information is all about, because chances are that you're not going to be as energetic as you were in your follicular phase if you were talking strictly hormonal. So with precision in mind, exercise and movement is very much still possible, but just switch the focus to focus on skills and drills. So if you're in team sport, whatever your sport is, or your number one, your focus sport, focus on skills and drills to improve technique and form and precision. So, strokes, mobility things that work on the precision and alignment aspect of the movement and the techniques themselves. In the gym, again, alignment and form, just focus a lot. You don't need to lift too heavy either, because as we said already, progesterone is catabolic. It's going to break muscle down. When you go to the gym and you exercise, you're breaking muscle down too. So if you're going to the gym, focus on alignment and form, and slow and steady. Take it slow. And for endurance, you can go longer and further, but slower. So I go for a long walk with some snacks, like some nuts in your pocket, and definitely take some water. And you can go for longer but slower, if that makes sense. Or if you want to go for a run, make sure that you pre-fuel, refuel, hydrate, pre-fuel with preferably protein, fats, a little bit of carbs, so that kind of sustains your energy throughout your run. And when you get back, refuel and then rest. And in terms of specific types of movements, if you're in the gym, we can get specific core stability movements. So when we think about alignment and precision and form, the center of your body needs to be strong in order for the alignment and everything to be strong too. So it sounds hippy dippy too, but like if your core feels strong, you feel stable and grounded and secure, which can be incredibly beneficial for your headspace in this phase as well. Great types of exercise in this phase, as I said, a nice long walk in nature to get that fresh air in, get everything flowing. Pilates is a really, that would be kind of the number one. It's alignment focused. It's strengthening, it's a little bit of resistance, it's long holds, slow, steady, stabilizing, form focused. Yoga for the same reasons, and also the mindfulness and flowing with the breath aspect. That can also help just calm any PMS or anxiety or tension whilst getting a good stretch and flowy movement, so you get your body moving so you're not tight and stiff. Also, I love to just put on a podcast or some music, put my mat down and have a good old stretch. I love doing a self stretch because I can stay in a position longer if I feel like I need to stretch that one out a bit more. And if you want to do a workout, I like doing a workout at home because I can stop if I don't want to do it anymore, and I got lighter weights at home or use resistance bands. But I also understand the holding accountable side of things, and when you go to a class, you don't have to think about the class. But when you're picking your class, I'd pick a not HIIT, not cardio, nothing too crazy and intense. Pilates and yoga class obviously are great, but in terms of workout, maybe a resistance or a strength class that you can choose your own weights to, depending on how strong you're feeling that day. Basically, a big point here to note and to bear in mind in this phase is to not push too hard. I said in the follicular phase that's pushing boundaries, that's breaking PBs, that's going further than you think you can, lifting heavier than you think you can or that you ever have. This phase, this is not necessarily a muscle building phase. So in terms of fueling, hydration is, I know it's not fueling, but super, super important in this phase. First thing in the morning, throughout the day with teas, water, electrolytes, soups, broths, all of that. Keeping the body hydrated will also help you not feel kind of puffy and stiff, and it just helps keep everything flowing. So hydration, carbs, pre-fueling with carbs. Carbs are gonna give you the energy to do your things, as with the last two phases, but especially before training in this phase, so that you have energy in the tank to burn. Progesterone being catabolic, it's gonna break things down. If you've got food that you've just digested, that's what's gonna be used basically for optimum high energy to maintain your energy, pre-fuel, keep hydrated. And yeah, in general, keep having enough carbs in this phase is also gonna prevent you later in the day. Like if you're in a carb deficit and PMS symptoms are rife, you're very likely to be reaching for the wrong kinds of foods later. So if you eat clean carbs earlier in the day, you're very likely to curb those cravings later in the day. Protein, so important in this phase, especially leucine rich protein. Keep that protein high because progesterone is catabolic, so it's breaking things down. If you're training and you're serious about your exercise and your training, breaking down muscle is the worst that you want. This is the phase to be pre-fueling, post-workout, refueling with high quality protein and every meal, every snack. Protein also keeps the body feeling fuller for longer, so has the potential to reduce cravings and curb hunger pangs and keep your mood stable as well. Fats are king in this phase. Fats are the building blocks of hormones, so you need fats anyways to be building these hormones that are naturally increasing, where you've got both estrogen and progesterone. Yes, you still have estrogen, but progesterone is dominant. The kind of mood and the vibe of this phase is low and slow and longer. Fats as a macronutrient in human bioscience are exactly that. They provide long-lasting, slower, lower energy. So getting enough fats in this phase is going to help with your keeping your energy stable, keeping your mood stable, because it's this low, slow, long burn, right? And also bear in mind you need around 250 more calories in this phase just purely for the energy intensive processes that are going on. Fats obviously higher in calories, but that's okay in this phase because you need the extra calories anyways. Refueling, so post-workout, protein. Don't know how many more times to say this, but protein. As I said in the follicular phase, it's the same all cycle round, but for women, refueling after exercise, 30 grams, 30 to 35, depending on your weight, of high quality protein in this phase, leucine rich. And to be honest, most of the cycle round, try and aim for leucine rich. Turkey's a great source of leucine within the window, the 30 to 40 minute window post exercise. So as soon as you finish training, basically, get your protein in, because the longer you leave it, the more your body's like, okay, I need to get some food from somewhere. So as soon as you can get some protein in there, it will obviously stop that catabolic process happening. Post-workout, also restock your carbs. You obviously will use carbs whilst you're working out anyways, less so if you're doing lower and slower intensity, but you will still use some carbs. So refueling with a little bit of carb, banana, great option. And restocking your carbs now, especially if you tapped into it, is gonna curb your carb cravings later for less preferable carbs and hunger cravings later in the day. So just refuel basically as soon as you can after you finish training. Again, fats, they will maintain your energy after that. And then hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. In terms of recovery in your luteal phase, caution getting too hot because you might already feel kind of just hot and clammy and sticky. Sauna and jacuzzi and a hot Epsom bath, obviously still great for muscle recovery. Epsom bath, magnesium always. That also will help with cramps and symptoms and everything in this phase too. So I'd still recommend, but just not too hot and not too long. Since the body's already running warmer, basically, which you literally might already feel this, a bit puffier, a bit sticky, a bit clammy, uncomfortable. That is your body temperature rising with all these rising hormones. And then what happens next? They drop, your temperature drops with it, and your next period comes. So I hope that was helpful. I've covered 4 phases there. Types of exercises to do in each phase, how to pre-fuel, refuel, and some recovery techniques. Once I've done this PT course, I will be taking online clients, and I'll also be posting some phase-specific workouts and everything super legit. But this video sums up everything that I know already that's been helpful to me so far. Less detailed, but a great overview of how to train in each phase of your cycle. Make sure you check out the rest of my YouTube videos. I'm also on Instagram at Kitchen Sink. Like this video, I love comments, subscribe to this channel for more, and see you next time.